One more show. One more show. One more show. The people were begging. They were like, come on. That cannot be it for pro football today. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl, and we're not going to hear from the Pro Football Today crew again together. We had to give the people what they wanted. It is Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh, Donnie Rightisde, and Joe Lisi. And last we spoke, we were getting ready for Super Bowl 59. The Philadelphia Eagles trying to stop the Kansas City Chiefs from three-peating. And boy, did they. 40-22, and it was not even that close. The slight underdog Philadelphia Eagles dominated from the jump. This was 24-0 at half. A few interceptions from Pat Mahomes saw him play the worst first half of his career. A 34-0 score as the result of a Devonta Smith dagger shot from Jalen Hurts at around midfield. And there was no doubt to be had that the Eagles were going to win the Super Bowl. Mahomes and the lead offense did stay out there and found some statistics. It wasn't stat padding, but it was garbage time. Eagles had their backups in, and we saw the Eagles finish off an incredibly dominant season, Donnie, and win their second Lombardi trophy.
Yeah, pretty incredible the way this game played out. Now, granted, I did have the Philadelphia Eagles by double digits, but you see that 40-22 final score, it wasn't even that close. It was 40-6 at one point late with about 3 minutes to go, and it was even worse in the first half. If you would have told me before the game Jalen Hurts was going to play well, I would have thought like, yeah, that's what the expectations are. A QBR rating of 75 for that game. But Patrick Mahomes' QBR rating for the Super Bowl in 11? Never did I think that was going to happen in a big moment like that. And why? The Eagles defense, which was number one all season long under Vic Fangio, and the worry was you give Andy Reid 2 weeks to prepare. What's going to happen? Typically, you come up with aces, and in this one, they came up, Joe, with Ugat. How about that?
This game was won in the trenches. Dominant offense and defensive line effort. We talk about how much quarterback pressures and sacks they got in terms of the front seven. For the Philadelphia Eagles, they dictated the tempo from start to finish. And the biggest thing for me is that once they jumped up 10-0 in the first quarter, it was lights out. They never looked back. They built a 34-0 third quarter lead. To your point, it was garbage time in the second half. The turnovers. Pat Mahomes looked mortal. The 2 turnovers, the critical interceptions by Zach Bond, and more importantly, Cooper DeJean to take it to the house, really set the tone. And from that point on, start to finish, complete dominance. Best team in the NFL. We talked about it in the pregame, and they showed out on Sunday.
Yeah, I think getting the, we're going to expand on this game certainly, and we'll talk about how the Eagles did this, the signs that some of us saw from Philadelphia where we felt that them winning the Super Bowl was how this season would end and what it means for this team historically. If anybody now agrees with what I was kind of saying in the lead up to the game, that they were going to be viewed as one of the best teams in the history of this league, but also what happened to Kansas City? You said Lisi Mahomes looked mortal. Yeah. No, he looked awful. He would have killed to look mortal in that football game. It was as bad as he's ever played. And these two know that I will now be just throwing statistic over statistic at them. That initially, understandably, everybody goes, he wins. He'll score 32 if he needs to score 32. He'll score 35 if that's what they need him. Well, they needed him to do anything in this game, and he couldn't. And this is why this Super Bowl is as much about the excellence of Philadelphia and how terrible this Chiefs football team, specifically on offense, looked. With 2 minutes and 31 seconds to go, Mahomes had 61 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, Donnie. I mean, I believe, I don't know if it was Eagle fan or Chiefs fans, there were chances for Carson Wentz in the Superdome.
Yeah, and also you didn't even think he would even come out for 8 or 7 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter where he was really able to pad his stats. But it was just amazing to see. It's something we don't see that often. The times where Patrick Mahomes looks bad, maybe a couple Super Bowls ago against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a ferocious pass rush, and then you saw the Philadelphia Eagles with a ferocious pass rush. Understand this. There's one thing between a pass rush and a blitz where you have to sell out to get pressure on the quarterback. The Eagles didn't blitz one time in the Super Bowl and absolutely got home whenever they wanted to, and it was apparent Patrick Mahomes, one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, dropping back in the pocket, worried about the front four here, taking his eyes instead of downfield to the pass rush, and that's a big issue. And I always want to bring this up, too, because 2 years ago, the Philadelphia Eagles had one of the best sack artist defenses in league history with the front four. They played on an ice skating rink. Imagine if it wasn't an ice skating rink, would we have been talking about a three-peat at this point for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? But you have to give credit to, like, Vic Fangio has been one of the best defensive coordinators in football for decades. Finally got his just due with the Super Bowl ring. He was spectacular, Joe, on Sunday.
Made them completely one-dimensional. They had no rushing attack. They had 45 rushing yards on the ground. 25 of those accounted by Pat Mahomes scrambling. So you take that out of the equation, you're talking about less than 30 yards rushing for the game and less than 3 yards per carry out of both of those running backs, Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. 3 of 11 third down conversions. They were forced to play from behind, and critical third downs, you become one-dimensional. The offensive line breaks down. You talk about Williams, Nolan Smith, you talk about Sweat, all of those playmakers coming off the edge, those two big bodies in terms of Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter to get a push up front, collapse the pocket. That was the difference for the ball game. And again, when you force turnovers and when they had to run the football, they can run it, whether it be Saquon was held in check for the most part, but you couldn't contain Jalen Hurts with 72 yards on the ground. They sustained drives, and that's the recipe to winning big matchups, to run the football, win the turnover battle, get quarterback pressures, and they did that on Sunday.
And we will expand on all of this, but we have a couple of hours here to talk all things going on around the National Football League. We'll take a look at the 2026 Super Bowl odds, which sees these two teams in the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs right near the top. What can you expect out of a Baltimore Ravens, a Buffalo Bills this year? How about some teams that have down seasons? You think about the San Francisco 49ers, the Cincinnati Bengals, who still have odds that suggest the books expect a bounce back could very well be around the corner. And then you also wonder if there are some deep shots down the board there, Donnie, where maybe a quarterback change could be coming that could start to really shift markets, again, further down that Super Bowl odds board.
Yeah, it always makes it tricky, too, because you look at that odds board and say to yourself, yeah, maybe the Philadelphia Eagles deserve to be favorites, but my goodness, the NFL doesn't do you any favorites. This is a college football where you pick your offseason teams and everybody plays the same teams, per se, in conference play. That's not the case. That's a first-place schedule, and it's a really, really good one that probably will see the Detroit Lions coming to the Philadelphia Eagles in game number 1 on Thursday night to open the season. But Kevin is right about this. You have free agency, you have the draft, and you have a lot of trades that are going to be going down at this point once you get past the combine. Because if you're looking for a quarterback and you find a quarterback, your odds will increase. If you have a quarterback and you trade your quarterback, your odds will decrease at this point. But the top teams are the Eagles, Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, and Lions. Not looking for quarterbacks. You expect those teams to be up there. They're guys just looking on the outside, the San Francisco 49ers, who will actually be their quarterback. If you bet right in that situation and you catch fire, you can get a great number there.
And you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles that started behind the Ravens and Kansas City for the most part, and all of a sudden we saw market fluctuation of put them now at 6-1 across multiple books. They're deserving to be the top team. We talk about the defensive talent that's just returning. They're going to be there for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And you talk about Jalen Hurts finally answering the critics, a dynamic performance. He now is a Super Bowl champion. He's outplayed Pat Mahomes in 2 Super Bowls that they have squared off back-to-back. And at the end of the day, I mean, the sky is the limit for this team. Barring any major miracles, Philadelphia is the team to beat in both conferences, and the other has-beens, I will say, will be there, but they have to step up and obviously answer the bell.
And we'll also zoom out and talk about the offseason questions that exist around the quarterback position, like Aaron Rodgers, who's not going to be back with the New York Jets. A number of wide receivers that could be on the move, like his teammate Devontae Adams or Cooper Kupp or Deebo Samuel, a superstar like Myles Garrett. What happens with the NFL draft? All things we will cover on Pro Football Today, but we dive into Super Bowl 59, how it happened. The Philadelphia Eagles, the champions of the world. We'll break that down next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass on the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes, end of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid. Back at the right here, it is Pro Football Today. Let's get into it. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, a 40-22 domination, where that final score, again, looks much kinder. It doesn't even look all that kind to begin with. The Eagles were up 34-0 in this football game with about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. They were up 24-0 at half. I think everybody would agree the interception that was a pick six by Cooper DeJean flipped this game into, oh, yeah, Philly's got this. It's going to take a lot more than Mahomes' magic to flip this game around, and that game did not get flipped around at any point in time. And I think one of the things that's just so interesting to me, and, you know, as we're kind of, how did we get here? How did this happen, right? There are a lot of people who are attacking that question from, well, I didn't think about this, or, well, I overlooked this. A little different for me, you know, and I think maybe for you guys as well, right, all to varying degrees. One thing that I noticed from a lot of people in their recaps, in their breakdowns is, well, look, Philly, much better football team. We knew that, right? I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles, the defensive line, so much better than KC's offensive line. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the KC defensive line is Chris Jones and some guys. I mean, that Eagles offensive line is the best I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, look, Trent McDuffie's nice, but the Philadelphia wide receiver corps, this thing will light anybody on fire. I mean, KC has some guys, but they're all interesting. All interesting that now that the game's over, after all of these people were picking Kansas City to win, because now we understand just how good the Philadelphia Eagles are. Now I don't sound crazy when I talk about this as an all-time great team. Now people are chiming in. This is top five. This is top. Oh, interesting. Here's my question, and I know my tone is a certain way. I'm not attacking you. But I just want to make that. No, because I did attack you on Sunday because I got riled up.
Even though I picked the Eagles.
Correct. So that's what I make. I'm not. Why did people go into this game, even going into it and go, Philly's better, but I like him? Why were so many people patently aware the Eagles were the better football team, and then they just kept picking the Kansas City Chiefs to win the game?
Because it's easy, and they're afraid to be wrong. That's what it is. I mean, I don't think anybody on this desk, we tell it like it is, and if we're wrong, we're wrong.
Yeah.
Not everybody's like that, especially in this industry. You get a lot of talking heads that just want to be right. And the easy way to be right is you take the guy that has won 3 Super Bowls and hopefully, and he's the favorite, and somehow, some way, they'll figure it out. But when they're wrong, then all of a sudden they have to backtrack. And then they have to make excuses. We said it on this desk. And I said it in terms of the breakdown. The breakdown for me was I thought Pat Mahomes had to be elite on Sunday, and he wasn't. And they had no rushing attack, which, again, I thought would be very difficult. When you cannot run the football and you're in predictable third down or long third down and second down type of situations, that puts a ton of pressure on your offensive line. And you're talking about those big uglies in the front seven for Philadelphia that brought it from, down number one straight through the fourth quarter, and they didn't let up. And that was the margin and why this game was as decisive as it was. They, continually got after Pat Mahomes. They battered him. When he threw the football, he was continuously hit. And that's the recipe. Again, other teams played with them, but they didn't have the level of dominance offensively and defensively that Philadelphia had. And we talked about it as well, Donnie. The levels from an offensive perspective, running back, dominant. You talk about the two wide receivers, dominant. Offensive line, dominant. Oh, by the way, an underrated quarterback that can throw and run, right? And then an above-average tight end to attack that defense at every level. That was the recipe, and that's what played out on Sunday.
Yeah, 22 starters in a football game. You give the Chiefs the quarterback, you give them the tight end, which means 19-2 is the advantage that the Eagles had. Now, understand this. This is the way it went the past 2 weeks. My pick was the Philadelphia Eagles in the game. We were asked to give a prediction, 31-20 for me. Also understood this. The Eagles had a much better defensive line than Kansas City. They're much better on the offensive line, and that's where you win football games. But also, I was including saying, if somebody were to come to me and say, Donnie, I don't care how this game plays out. It's Patrick Mahomes, it's Andy Reid, and they just win, and I'll take that. I said, that's fine. I can't even argue with that, because why? 2 years ago, the Eagles were way better than the Chiefs. 10-point lead, lost that game. Last year, 49ers, way better than the Chiefs. Double-digit lead, they lost. So coming into this game, I'm saying, okay, the Eagles are way better, but we've seen the MO where the Chiefs don't care, and it's Andy Reid, it's Mahomes, they'll make the plays when they need to. They just weren't able to do that, which is why I just didn't go blind and go, don't care, just going to take Kansas City. You have to be objective with the numbers that you look at and the way you handicap games. And even though I was wrong 2 years in a row, I was still going to bet the Eagles in this one because, again, you can't be that decisive in a football game and continue to have it go against you. So for me, if you bet Mahomes, I'm not even going to say, you were wrong at that point. You've been right so many times, it's ridiculous. But that game on Sunday was going to be won in the trenches, and it was clear. The Eagles were better at every single position when it mattered, and it showed up Sunday.
And what I would say, though, and I think, Donnie, you're right, where I felt Philly and San Francisco the 2 prior years were better teams. The thing that I had implored on anybody is how much worse this Kansas City team was than those years.
Yeah.
And that was often, they're just winning. And I think what we had was, again, the NBA, if Kansas City kind of held whether what we do is worth it or not in their hands. If they just showed up and found a way to win this game, then you're right. None of this matters.
Yeah.
Because that's how we'll break it down from here on out. But this was the worst version of Kansas City, both sides of the ball. And my belief in how good this Philly team was, 2 years ago, Philly, they would roll that foot. I mean, they would smash 2 years ago. The secondary was legitimately bad. We were kind of laughing a little bit because basically Gannon, who was the Eagles DC at the time, we all knew had the Cardinals job in the back pocket. And people were like, you think Arizona regrets kind of handshake agreeing that deal a little bit? This was a much different defense than that team. And these were things that were constantly, I think, to some, they'll figure it out. And then you come to realize that this KC team probably not as good as people thought or were willing to give them grace, but also just how good this Eagles team across the board was. The biggest weak point of the Eagles that even I would say, Jake Elliott. Awful season. Great kicker. Breaks the record for most kicking points in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. That's how locked in this Eagles group ended up being heading into this football game, which was one of the most dominant efforts in the history of a Super Bowl. We'll talk more about this game, the prop takeaways, what we got right inside of this football game, and what we got wrong next with you right here on SportsGrid. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs have a 5.5 game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5 game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
We dive into the meat and potatoes of this football game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. What was right, what was wrong. And look, I did think Saquon Barkley would still have himself a very good football game.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is, and obviously I was wrong about that, I didn't think Spags' number one priority in this game was stopping Saquon over giving his defense a fighting chance. Because Jalen Hurts ripped them to shreds, start to finish. Hurts could have thrown for 350 yards in this game if they wanted to, quite frankly. Now, they did bottle up Saquon. I would have thought at some point, I'd be like, okay, maybe if they hand it off for 5-6 yards, we can survive. Credit for stopping them, but Lisa, am I wrong to say that at some point they should have maybe stopped selling out to stop Saquon Barkley?
No adjustments. I think that's the biggest takeaway from both offensively and defensively for Andy Reid and Spagnuolo in this matchup is that they didn't make halftime adjustments. They certainly didn't make in-game adjustments for whatever reason. And they chose to go down with the game plan as is. And that was the recipe for them to get blown out in this matchup. And I think when you look at the offense for Philly, they ran the football when they had to, right? I mean, Saquon was held in check, 57 yards, but he did have 40 through the air. I think that was a game plan as well, getting him out in space. What did he have, 6 receptions in the matchup? But it was evident from the fourth down conversion that to A.J. Brown, that over-the-shoulder throw. They were dialed in from that get-go, even though there was a penalty and a terrible PI call with A.J. Brown in that matchup. That was the recipe. Throw over the top and see if you could beat us. And Jalen answered the bell. And when they chose to play man-to-man coverage and there were running lanes, he took it, he ran, and he sustained drives and got first downs. I mean, it was a dominant effort. 221 through the air, only 4 or 5 incompletions, 2 touchdowns. He made the big throws and added 72 yards on the ground. I mean, just a complete performance by Jalen Hurts. And for me, that was it, guys.
Yeah, you look at Kansas City, and you're right, Kevin, at that point. It was basically saying, like, well, Hurts is a rookie quarterback, doesn't throw for that many yards. Let's see if we can beat him. Not realizing that the offensive line is elite. The tight end is elite. 2 elite wide receivers and a quarterback that's been known to show up in big game moments here. He had 2 bad passes in that game. One was an interception and one was a fly route that was sort of underthrown to A.J. Brown. which he got furious at, so they made it right by throwing a touchdown pass to him, one drive later at that point, which we'll get into in just a bit. But the fact of the matter is, Jalen Hurts isn't chopped meat out there. That's 5 years as a quarterback, 2 times in the Super Bowl, and almost a Super Bowl MVP, which he was almost winning one in 2022, which would have given him 2 in 2 Super Bowls. And let's also remember, that season probably would have been the MVP if he wasn't banged up at the end of the season. Yeah. So you were asking a pedigree quarterback to make average plays and being surprised when they couldn't make them. And there is a point that you come to, like, who would have thought before the game, hey, Donnie, Saquon's going to run for 57 yards. All right, great. The wide receivers dominated. Who's going to lead the way? 69 yards. Wait a second. They put up 40 points because they spread the football around and played great defense. But the fact of the matter is the Chiefs obviously came into the game. We're not going to let Saquon beat us. Okay, we'll just have a 40-burger dropped on our head because we tried to stop a running back. That was it. Yeah.
I mean, that is the thing. And I think that is why I got so hot throughout this season with the Hurts stuff. We left playoff games in these playoffs multiple times. Man, what's wrong with his offense? Man, his defense, I mean, they're playing well, but I don't know if the offense is going to be good. They set the single postseason record for most points scored as a team.
As the games ramped up.
I just...
Low to medium to ridiculous to pop in the Super Bowl.
They ended up with Saquon having, running-wise, because he was good in the receiving game, his worst game of the season.
Yep.
And Jalen Hurts was like, yeah, don't worry about it. I got it. I'm one of the best Super Bowl quarterbacks of all time, which he basically now is. Minimum 2 starts. He's one of the best Super Bowl quarterbacks of all time. Like, that's where we are, which is incredible to say. But a quarterback that people were like, I don't know if he's top 16.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's an above-average quarterback. See, one thing I will always say, I love how much Lisi can't stand the Hurts slander. He might get more angry about it than I do.
Well, I
can see it in your face.
But I understand back in Alabama where he was categorized as a runner. Yeah. I got that. He was a very raw passer and wasn't given all that much of an opportunity in Alabama. But he transformed at Oklahoma, and he's a battle-tested guy. And if you think that was a big stage, played in an SEC championship, 100,000 people. I mean, come on, national championship games.
Yeah.
Kid's battle-tested, man.
Certainly is, and certainly stepped up, and he topped his own record, which was most rushing yards in a Super Bowl of 70 from the first time to 72 in this game. He is also eventually going to finish with the most rushing touchdowns in the history of NFL postseason. We'll talk more history and cheat.
Slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Skovron, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience, who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's is offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night. But it doesn't seem to matter to them
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Pro Football Today is right here on SportsGrid, and we'll kind of circle back to maybe some of the historical nature of this Philadelphia season, see if anybody agrees with me, but we have been, and I'm loving this, waxing poetic about how good this Eagles team is. Let's talk Chiefs. Now we're really in my domain. Man, this team was fraudulent, huh? And the signs were all there. I mean, the signs were all there. The offense wasn't as good, the defense wasn't as good. Every single game being a one-score game is not really a great thing. You got to see, winning all your one-score games is cool. Only playing one-score games means you cannot separate on teams. Occasionally, you need to be able to do that. Kansas City couldn't do it at any point all season long. And one of, to me, the biggest sign that the notion of Mahomes can just flip this switch whenever he wants was the Houston game. Because that was a top 5 defense in football. And he looked the same way he had in the regular season. Made some plays, not that great. And the notion, again, for a lot of people was, it's Houston. He doesn't care. He's not trying. He'll figure it out. And then he was great against Buffalo. But to me, Buffalo was a much worse defense. And then we saw what this looked like against Philadelphia. So I will go to you first, Donnie. Your takeaway specifically on the Patrick Mahomes performance and maybe what it means big picture.
Big picture, I don't think it means all that much. We know how talented a quarterback he is, and the way you get to a quarterback and rattle him in any situation is you don't even have to blitz, and the 4 guys are getting home, which means every time he takes that snap, the first thing he's looking at, did the defensive tackle blow up my guard? Is Joe Thuney on the left side, who is a guard playing tackle? Oh, my goodness, did he get a handle on the defender? But for me, going forward, you saw what happened a couple years ago, more than 2 years ago, when Kansas City got beat in the Super Bowl by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Almost the same MO. They crushed the pocket left and right. Andy Reid made adjustments by going out in the offseason and rebuilding that offensive line. So if you tell me that same MO was going to happen, which when you lose the Super Bowl, it stings. And as soon as you lose, you're like, right back to the chalkboard. Why did we lose this football game? Well, we got dominated in the trenches. So let's just say they get a left tackle that's serviceable and a right tackle that's serviceable, and they go back to have one of the best centers in football. Thuney, one of the best guards in football, goes back to guard. They're going to be right back where they were. Rashee Rice is coming back next year. Another a true offseason with Marquise Hollywood-Brown at the wide receiver position, and also taking a look at Xavier Worthy, and they might add on. Who knows if Travis Kelce is going to come back? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But for me, it was a shocking display of how Patrick Mahomes, he said, the 11 QBR rating, we've never seen that before. But I'm not looking at this and, hey, you know what? The dynasty is crumbling. They'll never get back. Patrick Mahomes isn't 41 years old like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers at the end of his career. He is right in the middle of his prime, and Andy Reid is coming back next year. I'm not worried about Kansas City. They'll be in the playoffs. They'll be playing for an AFC championship game, and it won't be crazy if somebody says, Donnie, fast forward. They're back in the Super Bowl next year. Adjustments will be made, which means beef up, Joe, that offensive line.
Yeah, they'll be a contender for the AFC Championship. I believe that. And I think they need to change their offensive philosophy a little bit. You saw it in garbage time where you saw Pat Mahomes go deep to Xavier Worthy. Those plays were far and few between throughout the regular season, whether it be the lack of experience maybe out of Xavier Worthy and the lack of confidence. But that was the biggest transformation when you look at the offense when they used to have Tyreek Hill to what we see now. A lot of the throws throughout the regular season, even when Rashee Rice was in there, were over the middle. They were short to intermediate routes. We didn't see those chunk plays in terms of post patterns, fly patterns. The aging wide receiver, I think, in terms of Juju and DeAndre Hopkins, hurt them to a capacity and to a degree. But now when you have Rashee Rice coming back, you have Xavier Worthy, and now a healthy Hollywood Brown, you have to get back to that offense of chunk plays and allowing and putting the football into your quarterback's hands. And I'm talking about grip it and rip it. Throw it deep so you could set up the rushing attack. They need a legitimate running back. The journeyman running backs of Isaiah Pacheco, even though he's a younger running back, he's not elite and explosive. You need a guy, a home run hitter, whether it be Genti or someone in this draft that can take it from point A to point B to take the pressure off of that offensive line.
So I agree that they should try and do those things. But I don't understand why them never doing any of those things was so okay with everybody. Well, I do understand. It's because they won. Nobody cared. But does anybody now want to acknowledge that they haven't looked the same for a few years now? No, but beyond, it's not like, they didn't look the same in the game.
They were winning different ways. They recognized I believe from an organizational standpoint, they didn't have the elite speed on the perimeter anymore. They tried to have that with Rashee Rice. He was developing into that type of home run type of hitter, and then he got hurt against the Chargers, and all of a sudden their identity and MO changed. We're going to methodically win games, lower scoring, rely on the defense, but then you get exposed when you play a complete team like the Philadelphia Eagles that are there from an offensive perspective, but, oh, by the way, have the best defense at every level, Kev. Look at some of these other teams. You want to talk about some of the teams that they played? The Chargers in the division, they're not elite at every level of the defense. They don't have a legitimate secondary, a legitimate linebacker core, and a dominant front seven. They may have one or two pieces, but not a complete team. And that's a difference, I think, when you look at the Eagles. They are legitimately complete at every single level. You're talking about 4 defensive tackles and linemen. Linebackers, too. Nakobe Dean when he was there, and Zach Bond. I mean, every level for the most part of the secondary. So where do you expose Philadelphia? You don't.
So I think that is true. I just think that if Patrick Mahomes is who everyone thinks he is, and I'm not saying I'm outside of that,
right.
The way he has played for 2 years now could only be explained away by he's not trying, just wait for the playoffs, right? And then we saw that was not the case. These are numbers that we pulled earlier this week on Game Time Decisions. First 5 seasons as a starter. Passer rating, total touchdown, yards per attempt. First in this league by a mile. Last 2 years, 17th in passer rating, 9th in total touchdowns, and 20th in yards per attempt. Is that not concerning to anybody? That for 2 years now, in a regular season, he has statistically has no argument to be seen as a top 8-10 quarterback in the league?
No, I think part of that is the person. I think part of that is the personnel and the play calling. Meaning when Andy Reid says, you know what, we don't have speed on the outside, so we're going to call plays underneath. We're going to go to Travis. We're going to go to, obviously, Xavier Worthy on sweeps, on reverses, on short routes, see if we can. They don't have or didn't. I can't remember a game where Pat Mahomes was throwing 25 and 30 yards down the field vertically. Everything was underneath, Donnie, for the most part.
Yeah, no, and I agree. You're talking about Travis Kelce, who still is going to go down as the best tight end ever. 5 years ago, he's wide open every single play because nobody could defend him at all, which opened everything else up on the field. Now, you see him starting to slow down. You see the defense getting better for the Kansas City Chiefs. They go into a mode that says, you know what? I don't have to throw it all the way around. We lost one football game this year. One. I understand the 2, but they lost 38-0 to the Denver Broncos when those starters played. They went into the playoffs. They beat Houston. They went into the playoffs. They beat Buffalo. They wound up in the Super Bowl and got beat. It happens. You can't win every Super Bowl. But for me, when I'm lining it up, like what happens if next year, let's just say we have Jamar Chase gets traded to the Chiefs. I'm expecting Patrick Mahomes to go right back to best passer rating, most touchdowns and yards at that point.
So I think that is fine, and I'm not telling you he's incapable of it. What I am saying is at no point has his status as best quarterback in the league been challenged in this window, and yet he has not played like such at any point during this stretch. And I don't know. All I'm saying is there are guys who are not even close to it. Aaron Rodgers is 40 off a torn Achilles, and we crush him. We crush him. Mahomes is the gift to the position and is playing average football for 2 years, and I'm supposed to believe it's because he trusts they're going to block the kick against Denver.
But he's played in, 5 Super Bowls, and he's played in 7 AFC championships. Until that changes, it's not going to stop.
It changed in a major way last weekend. We'll be back here with you on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Back on Pro Football today, we're going to expand a little bit on things surrounding Kansas City, Reed, just all these different guys. My final question to you guys on this is, so for, again, 2 years statistically, Mahomes, despite all the winning, can't even sniff the MVP conversation, right? Would you expect Mahomes next year, off the loss, to statistically bounce back and actually play like a top 5 quarterback in the league?
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, and I think that's, again, totally fine, but he has not done that now for 2 years. So, do you think he will do that because you've always thought he was doing that? Because he hasn't been. No, but do you think he's going to do that because they lost? No, I think they're going to get better.
They're going to do that because of exactly what we just said. We have now the emergence of Xavier Worthy that had 8 receptions, 157 yards in the early part of the season. He was a raw rookie. He wasn't running smart and clean patterns, and Mahomes didn't have confidence to go to him. And you have Rashee Rice coming back from injury. You have the continuity and consistency of now 3 guys, hopefully, in Marquise Brown, Worthy, and Rice that can develop to be one of the most prolific in terms of the AFC. Are they the most dominant? We'll see. But at the end of the day, you got a trigger man in Pat Mahomes that certainly can find a wide-open wide receiver.
And you also see moves like, James Cook in Buffalo if he wants more money. I'm just spitballing. You have those 3 wide receivers, which I agree. You're going to retool the offensive line. You pulled Kareem Hunt off the couch, Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know what happened. Was it injuries or what? You give them a sustainable running game. It also opens up everything else. But I do agree with Joe for the most part. You have those 3 wide receivers for an entire offseason. They'll get better just by doing that alone.
Yeah, and I think it's on the board. I think it's going to be very interesting to see, though, because if it doesn't change, for the first time, I won't be the only one talking about it. And I think that is fair to say. If the regular season looks like this again next year.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't just fall backwards into every single win.
Well, I mean, if they go 15-1 again, we're going to say he's the best quarterback again.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
That's the MO then. Hey, the guy went 15-1 at quarterback. Oh,
since he's been a starter, he's been to the AFC Championship in every year.
I understand that. I'm not talking.
But again, we judge.
But here's the thing. That's not how they grade it, because Jalen Hurts is fighting for his life to climb into the top 5.
Yeah, but Mahomes has an MO for his first couple years. He might be the best single quarterback we've ever seen in the history of football. But the winning didn't stop.
Right, but his numbers all stopped. So what is it?
Well, it's the same thing like in the Super
So
Bowl where they had
Mahomes-
Saquon on the sideline. It's like, hey, kid, don't worry about it. You only got 57 yards, but you made the team better today. That's Patrick Mahomes.
But again, right. So
Just win.
Hey, Saquon, thanks. You made us better today.
Yeah.
You know what we're not going to do? You know what didn't happen at the end of this game? We go, man, Saquon just gets it done. Let me tell you something. The way Saquon got it done, listen, they didn't need him to bust the one for 50, 60 yards. He just stepped up,
Just
ran
don't
for
fumble.
2 yards
Just
at a
don't
time,
fumble.
and that was great.
I'll go back.
That's what we've been talking like with Mahomes for years now.
I keep going back to this. If you had to start a team tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? Are you going to pick Josh Allen and Lamar over Pat Mahomes?
Nope.
I'm not picking Pat first. I'll just say that.
All right, well,
see,
there you
come
go.
on. Yeah, come on now.
I'm not.
Stop
All
it.
right.
I'm not. I'm not.
I think if you surveyed 100 football people, 99 would.
You,
I don't
if you
think it would be
surveyed
99.
100 bums, they'd all pick Patrick Mahomes.
No, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, that's true. A lot of eyes closed. What was the end of what was the final score?
I think
guys
I
would
think
pick
the football
Mahomes.
guys would still take Mahomes over everything.
How? Okay, see.
The pedigree, again, we talk about it.
Hold on. That pedigree, right? He didn't make the Pro Bowl.
Does it?
No. Hold on. In the AFC, there were 3 slots. They went to Josh, Joe, and Lamar. Mr. Pedigree would be first picked by 99 out of 100 people. Couldn't get one of the 3 slots in a year he went 15-1. That doesn't sound off alarm bells to you?
Who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT in the NFL when it comes to the quarterback position?
Tom Brady.
Okay, why?
I mean, because he played for 2+ decades and was incredible in both.
I think it's the 7 Super Bowl championships as well. I mean, the fact that Pat has 3 and every year basically goes to the AFC Championship
5 Super Bowls.
5 Super Bowls. I mean, come on. That's how you get
next
judged.
Tyrod Taylor's going to come on with a set.
No, I'm not.
Come on. Tyrod was on the Chiefs. They would win.
They wouldn't win. But see. Here is the thing.
Yeah.
No, this isn't very difficult. You guys are telling me that everybody agrees it's Pat, yet I am giving you a legitimate piece of evidence that
but the evidence
this
is
year,
the guy goes to the Super Bowl every year. Like Josh Allen hasn't even been to a Super Bowl.
100% he has.
Yes, because you need that clutch gene to be able to perform in the biggest moments, and Mahomes does that.
But I understand. Mahomes absolutely is the clutchest quarterback in football.
But that's
right?
it.
Okay. No, it's not.
All right.
The thing
But
is,
who's had a better start to their career through even when you say 2 down years?
No one.
Look at his numbers, how they compare to everybody through those first couple years.
correct. But my point to you is, Donnie, right? Year 1 Mahomes, we've not seen in a very long time. Here's my other point to you. He's trending downwards. That's the reality of it.
He's not. He threw 50 touchdown passes. I mean, come on.
He threw 26 and 27 the last 2 years.
but-
The year before that, he threw 41. No. You can. I get it. 5,050 year 1. Forget that. 41 touchdown passes. EB left, and he's thrown 53 in the last
But his
2 years
team
combined.
was 15-2. He was 14-1 as a starter.
So, and I got my answer. Nothing has changed for either one of them.
No.
Nothing has changed. No, that's fine, and that's fine.
See him in that fourth quarter? Phew, man.
Yeah. Again, the simple analogy would be is that you two would have voted Saquon Barkley Super Bowl MVP. Is essentially
Yearly
the
culmination. Yes, correct.
Like,
40 yards receiving made people a lot of money. That's it.
Saquon won the game with defense, is what many would say here. We're going to take a little bit of a break on pro football today. When we get back, we do take a look at the historical nature of this Philadelphia Eagle football team and also what could be next for another Kelce. We've seen one Kelce from Philly retire, not really how we wanted to. Is that next for Travis Kelce? Because that could shake things up. But then again, Mahomes doesn't even need wide receivers. They can just hand the football off every single game, win the game.
He could run it.
Win the game 6-3, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, look at those numbers. That's kind of what we're getting at here on Pro Football today. And don't forget, we're also going to expand onto those 2026 Super Bowl odds. We're going to also see some of the stuff that we did out in New Orleans. Warren Sapp, Raheem Mostert, and Lisi also getting the feel for what's going on around the NFL draft. That's all next here on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are going to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Back right here on Pro Football Today. Let's talk some history. Let's first start with Travis Kelce. Where are you guys at around the Chiefs' legendary tight end, future first ballot Hall of Famer, and whether or not his career's done, or perhaps we'll see Travis out there again next season?
I think he's done. I watched the tape and watching his blocking ability, watching the route running, watching, not the drops. There was a couple of bad passes, but just a lack of effort. I want to say in terms of the Super Bowl, I think he's at the end of the rope. I mean, he's had a storied career, definite Hall of Famer, best modern-day tight end that we have seen in the NFL, and just the ability to step up in big games, second to none. But I think now he's putting his team at a detriment. They need a younger player. Can he come on potentially in terms of a role type of situation? It's possible, but having him out there on each and every down, I think they're at a disadvantage right now.
Could he play again next year? Absolutely. Would the Chiefs want him to come back? Absolutely, as a team leader. But you have to understand this. 36 years old during next year's NFL season. I believe it's very early in the season he turns 36. You see the amount of abuse that tight ends take just playing 3 to 4 years in the NFL, let alone over a decade. Multiple Super Bowl championships, yards, catches, touchdown. He just about leads in every single statistic for tight ends that you could ask for at this point. And also, you sit back and you say to yourself, well, what's he going to do with himself in the future? I don't know. Marry Taylor Swift, and then go out and get himself a job with a national product like an Amazon or a Prime or a NBC or a Fox. And then, my podcast is worth like $100 million. Like, you can live the perfect life and still walk away from it relatively unscathed with injury. I just don't see the need for him to come back. It's like, boy, you know what? I love the locker room, which is one thing. I love the spotlight. Yes, they do. But what more do you have to accomplish? Most guys come back, you're like, boy, I just want a ring chase.
Yeah.
He already has the rings.
Yeah, I think the tough thing for Travis is we know the performances are trending down. I think somewhat due to the fact that he doesn't play quarterback, we actually acknowledge his performances are trending down instead of the other guy. If you look at it this year, this season he caught 97 passes. Of guys to catch at least 80 passes, there was 22 of them in the NFL. He had the second worst yards per reception. Wan'Dale Robinson, shout out the screen merchant. Oh,
yes.
That guy had some quicks.
If you want to laugh quickly, Kelce was at 8.5. Wan'Dale's 7.5. Like, everybody else is like basically 10 or better. It's a little crazy, but shout out Wan'Dale Robinson. I I did not think the result of the game was going to impact his decision.
No?
I didn't, because to me, it was about, I'm feeling good, and I want to get the postseason Triple Crown all time, which he could get, trying to pass Jerry Rice. But now, the way that game felt, I do feel like the game is going to impact him, but I still can't figure out which way. Where, you know what, I can't go out like that, I got to play again, or, yeah, I'm done. I'm not doing this again. It's not worth it. I've done everything I could possibly do, and that was so upsetting. And here's the thing about Kelce, and I'm not trying to rag on the guy, but so Mahomes did get criticized for the performance, right? As did Travis Kelce. Like, nobody talked about whether, Hopkins was bad, right? But, we talked about the quarterback. Kelce was very bad in that football game and looked like he quit in the middle of the game as much as anybody on that Chiefs team, which I think is one of the more fascinating things about what that says for him moving forward. I've heard people talk about this. He and his brother Jason do the podcast, and one of the reasons why, Jason is so thrown off, I think one of the reasons Jason Kelce, Donnie, is so thrown off by the game is he watched his brother be terrible in that football game. It wasn't as if it was a really good game. Congrats to Philadelphia. His brother played one of the worst games of his life, and in the middle of it looked like he was quitting.
Yes, and it was not like, Kellen Winslow way back in the day being carried off the field at the Orange Bowl. Man, he gave it his all, and he was dominant out there. You did watch some of those replay tapes on the All-22s, and Joe, quite frankly, wasn't getting out of his stance, wasn't open, looked like the effort wasn't there, looked like during the game when the mic'd-up sessions was, that energy wasn't there. It was almost like he was resigned to the fact, this is my last ride. Boy, I hope it goes well. If it does, I'll ride that way. But, boy, if we're getting collapsed in the first half, I just can't wait till this game is over and I can get out of here.
When you start breaking down in terms of run blocking and you're now allowing other players to get leveled because you can't make it from point A to point B, that's a problem. It's one thing to drop passes. It's one thing not to get open. But when you start being a deficit in terms of that offense, that's a problem.
Yeah, it certainly is. What we are going to do, though, is take a break here. Again, we want to kind of get you guys some of what we did out in New Orleans. And Donnie had a great sit-down interview with Warren Sapp, a Super Bowl champion. So we are going to get you guys that interview after this commercial break, and then we'll pick the pieces up and talk Super Bowl 2026. That's next. It's right here. It's Pro Football Today on SportsGrid.
Slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Skovron, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
20-34. They have 14 games below 500. Any given night, you have no idea who is going to play for Philadelphia. Embiid has missed so many more games than he has actually played this year.
I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens because for the last 4 years now, I do it every year, and I want to hit myself in the head with a bat.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
That's bad.